When you look at the raw statistical dashboards from the incredibly humid night of Saturday, May 30th, 2026, the numbers just, well, they really shouldn't make sense.
No, they completely defy conventional football logic,
Right. Like, if you were just reading a spreadsheet, you would see one team completing nearly 900 passes.
which is an absolutely astronomical figure.
Exactly. And they registered over 75% possession, literally camping inside their opponent's penalty area for most of the night.
Yeah, by all conventional logic, you'd assume that team walked away with an easy, routine victory.
But football isn't played on a spreadsheet. It is played by, actual human beings.
Vulnerable, exhausted human beings.
Yeah, and what actually happened at the magnificent Puskás Arena in Budapest was one of the most agonizing, claustrophobic, and psychologically draining events in modern sports history.
It was a truly fascinating collision of realities.
It really was.
On one side, you have the theoretical perfection of a tactical system designed to entirely suffocate an opponent with the ball.
Yeah, just starving them of possession.
Exactly. And on the other side, you have the sheer, raw willpower of human endurance trying to withstand that suffocation for 120 grueling minutes.
Okay, let's unpack this because that is exactly what we are dissecting today.
I can't wait.
We have a massive stack of sources here. We are talking real-time commentary logs, granular post-game statistical reports, and full post-match press conferences.
It is a goldmine of data.
It really is. And our goal is to reconstruct the 2026 Champions League final between Paris Saint-Germain and Arsenal.
And we aren't just going to read you the scoreline either.
No, definitely not. We are going to examine the biomechanics of a missed penalty, the tactical geometry of a defensive low block, and the precise neurological toll that extreme fatigue takes on decision-making.
Because whether you are someone who builds expected goals models for fun, or you're simply fascinated by human beings performing under unimaginable pressure, this match offers an absolute masterclass.
It really does. We are talking about two contrasting philosophies pushed to their absolute breaking points.
So we should probably set the stage first, right?
Yeah, let's set the stage, because the context heading into this match is incredibly heavy.
The emotional baggage alone is staggering.
Think about what these two squads carried onto the pitch. Arsenal arrived in Budapest riding a wave of almost unprecedented euphoria.
Right, they had just won the league.
Exactly. Just a week prior, they had finally ended a 22-year drought to win the Premier League.
Which is a lifetime in football.
It is. The psychological relief of getting that massive monkey off their back was monumental. And now they were looking for a historic double.
And then you contrast that with Paris Saint-Germain, managed by Luis Enrique.
Yeah, completely different vibe.
Totally. They weren't arriving as plucky challengers. They were the defending Champions League title holders.
Right, they had a target on their backs.
Their objective was entirely different. Winning it once is a massive achievement, sure. But defending the crown is how you establish a true modern dynasty.
And PSG operates under an astronomical level of financial and public pressure.
They absolutely do. But under Enrique, they had finally transformed from a collection of individual superstars into a cohesive, highly structured possession machine.
But even before a single ball is kicked, the whole narrative gets thrown into absolute chaos when the starting lineups drop.
All the lineups were a huge talking point.
I remember reading our live match feeds right before kickoff, and Mikel Arteta made some decisions that left analysts completely stunned.
He took some massive gambles.
The biggest one being his midfield. He decides to start 19-year-old Miles Lewis-Skelly in the center of the park.
A teenager.
A teenager. In a European final, I look at that and I just think, is that a stroke of absolute genius, or is that managerial hubris?
It is an incredibly high-stakes gamble, without a doubt.
Why is it so dangerous, though?
To understand that, you have to look at the cognitive demands placed on a central midfielder in a game like this. When you are playing as PSG, the speed at which you have to process spatial information is terrifying.
Like, you just don't have time to think.
Exactly. A 19-year-old might have the physical stamina, sure, but central midfield against a possession-heavy team requires constant, exhausting, 360-degree scanning.
You have to know where everyone is at all times.
Right. You have to constantly track the movements of players like Vitinha, who are intentionally floating into your blind spots.
So Arteta clearly believed Lewis-Skelly had the processing speed and the emotional regulation to handle that environment.
He must have. But it immediately gave PSG a highly visible target to test.
And that wasn't even the most glaring constraint Arsenal faced. They were dealing with a massive, massive injury crisis at the back.
The defense was practically taped together.
Literally, Ben White is out completely, just not available.
Huge loss.
And Jurrien Timber is carrying a knock and is only fit enough for the bench. So Arteta is forced to deploy Christian Mosquera at right back.
Which changes everything structurally.
So now you have a makeshift, non-specialist right back stepping onto the pitch for the biggest game of his entire life.
It is a nightmare scenario for a defender.
Explain to me the actual mechanical disadvantage there. Like, what happens when you put a player out of their natural position against an elite winger?
It really comes down to muscle memory and subconscious positioning.
Okay.
When you play your natural position, your body orientation, how you open your hips, which foot you pivot on, the exact distance you keep from the touchline is entirely automatic.
You just do it.
Exactly. You don't think. You just react.
Yeah.
But when you move a center back out to right back,
Yeah.
they have to consciously think about all those micro adjustments.
And conscious thought is slow.
Exactly. And when you are facing a winger like PSG's Kvaratskhelia, conscious thought is far too slow.
Kvaratskhelia is just terrifying one-on-one.
He is. His superpower isn't just his top speed, it's his deceleration. He can drop his center of gravity and change direction in a fraction of a second.
Wow.
So if you are a makeshift fullback, your kinetic chain is just slightly misaligned, meaning it takes you a millisecond longer to shift your weight and react.
And that millisecond is everything.
Right. Against an elite dribbler, that single millisecond is the literal difference between a successful tackle and a foul.
So Arsenal has these glaring structural vulnerabilities right from the jump. The tactical feeds are predicting a slow, methodical opening where Arsenal just tries to survive the initial onslaught.
Everyone thought they would just park the bus early on.
And then the match actually starts. And within 6 minutes, the entire script is just burned to the ground.
It was a sequence of stunning efficiency from Arsenal.
6 minutes in, PSG is holding their defensive line incredibly high, suffocating the midfield just as everyone predicted they would.
They're squeezing the pitch.
Yeah, but then Leandro Trossard gets this tiny pocket of space. He looks up and he sees Kai Havertz making a run.
And Havertz knows exactly what he's doing in these moments.
Right. I mean, Havertz scored the winning goal in the 2021 Champions League final for Chelsea, so he knows this stage intimately.
He thrives in that space.
So Trossard plays a perfectly weighted ball over the top. Havertz bursts past the high line, isolates the goalkeeper, and absolutely rifles a shot into the roof of the net. Bang! 1-0 Arsenal.
The geometry of that goal was just beautiful to watch.
It really was.
It exploited the one inherent unavoidable risk in Luis Enrique's system.
The high line, right.
Exactly. If you want to compress the pitch and dominate possession, your center backs must push up almost to the halfway line.
Leaving all that grass behind them.
Right. The space isn't in front of the defense. It is a massive gaping void behind them. Trossard recognized the exact trigger moment when PSG's midfield pressure was a fraction late.
And Havertz timed his run perfectly.
Down to the millisecond, yeah, to beat the offside trap.
It was explosive. But I really have to push back on how we frame this moment.
What do you mean?
Well, every pundit on the live feeds called a 6-minute goal a dream start. But I look at this and wonder if scoring that early in a match of this magnitude is actually a tactical disaster disguised as a triumph.
That is a very interesting way to look at it.
Like, doesn't scoring in minute 6 trigger something deep in human psychology? Doesn't it subconsciously force you into preservation mode, effectively inviting a team like PSG to just tee off on you for 84 straight minutes?
That is an excellent observation, and it taps into a well-documented psychological phenomenon known as loss aversion.
Loss aversion, right?
Yeah. Human beings naturally prefer avoiding losses to acquiring equivalent gains.
So we hate losing more than we like winning.
Exactly. When the game is 0-0, you are playing to win. The moment you go up 1-0, especially that early, your psychological imperative shifts entirely to protecting what you have.
You just want to hold on.
Right. And for a team like Arsenal, who already possessed a highly disciplined defensive structure, that early goal effectively gave them permission to abandon any sustained attacking ambition.
They just sank into a trench.
They naturally sank into a deep, resolute block.
Yeah.
But by doing so, they handed the steering wheel of the match entirely over to Paris Saint-Germain.
I mean, they didn't just hand over the steering wheel. They handed over the keys, the engine, and the entire highway.
They really did.
The statistical dashboards from this phase of the game are just staggering. Let's look at the actual numbers, because this wasn't just a team having a bit more of the ball.
The numbers are mind-boggling.
PSG finished the match with 75.3% possession. Arsenal had 24.7%.
Those are numbers you might expect in an early round domestic cup match between a Champions League giant and a semi-professional team from 3 leagues down.
Right, not a final.
Exactly. To see that disparity between the champions of England and the champions of France in a European final is almost unheard of.
And it wasn't just holding the ball on their own half either. The passing metrics show PSG completed 887 passes at an accuracy rate of 90.9%.
Almost 900 passes.
Yeah, while Arsenal, by contrast, completed only 285 passes at a dismal 68.8% accuracy.
They couldn't keep the ball at all.
But I want to challenge you on this, though. A lot of critics of possession-based football call this kind of thing sterile domination.
The idea that passing doesn't equal attacking.
Right. They argue that a team can pass the ball sideways 1,000 times without actually doing any real damage. Was PSG actually threatening, or were they just inflating their stats?
We can answer that definitively by looking at where those passes were actually going.
Okay, let's look at the pitch map.
If you look at the metric for touches in the opposition box, PSG had 43 touches inside Arsenal's penalty area.
Wow, 43.
Arsenal had just 14.
That is a massive difference.
It is. 43 touches inside the most heavily defended, congested 20-yard rectangle on the pitch is the exact opposite of sterile.
They were constantly probing.
Right. It means PSG's wingers were constantly stretching the touchlines, creating these microscopic gaps, what tacticians call half spaces, for their midfielders to drive into.
So they were doing real damage with that possession.
They were operating on the edge of a scalpel, probing a tightly packed defense over and over again.
Which is perfectly reflected in the shooting stats, too. PSG generated 21 shots to Arsenal's 7.
A huge volume of shots.
And the expected goals, or XG, tells a great story here. For those who might not follow the stat closely, XG is a metric that calculates the historical probability of a shot resulting in a goal based on distance, angle, and defender proximity.
It measures shot quality, essentially.
Right. PSG had an XG of 1.77. Arsenal's was just 0.44.
And what's fascinating here is that XG figure of 1.77 from 21 shots actually tells a brilliant secondary story.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, if you divide 1.77 by 21, you get a very low average XG per shot.
Ah, I see.
What that mathematical reality tells us is that while PSG was shooting constantly, Arsenal's defensive structure was so incredibly compact that they were forcing PSG to take highly difficult, low-probability shots.
It's just shooting through a forest of human bodies.
Exactly, through a maze of defenders.
Let's talk about that forest of bodies, because the physical toll of what Arsenal was doing is just hard to overstate.
It must have been agonizing.
Our sources highlighted the defensive data for Arsenal's center-back pairing, Gabriel Magalhaes and William Saliba. To maintain a defensive low block against an elite team for over an hour is not just about standing near your own goal.
Far from it. A low block is a highly synchronized, constantly moving organism.
Like a machine.
Exactly. Arsenal was operating in a 4-5-1 formation out of possession. The fundamental rule of that system is that the distances between the players must remain rigidly intact.
You can't let any gaps open up.
Right, usually no more than 4 to 5 yards between the defensive line and the midfield line. If one player steps forward just 2 yards out of sync to chase a ball, it creates a geometric triangle for PSG to pass straight through.
And the mental concentration required to maintain those exact distances while the ball is zipping around you at lightning speed must be exhausting.
It burns tremendous amounts of cognitive and physical energy.
Especially in that Budapest heat.
Oh, absolutely. The constant lateral shuffling 10 yards left, 10 yards right, over and over again, builds up intense lactic acid in the quadriceps and calves. It is brutal, unglamorous, anaerobic work.
The clearance statistics highlight that perfectly. In a game where PSG had 75% of the ball, the total clearances were practically even.
Which is wild to think about.
It was 38 clearances for PSG and 37 for Arsenal. Arsenal center backs were constantly having to intervene, heading away crosses, just hacking the ball out of the danger zone.
Total firefighting mode.
Yeah, and this actually sparked a massive, fiery debate on the real-time commentary feeds. Half the viewers were screaming that Arsenal were incredibly lucky, that they were totally outclassed and just clinging on for dear life.
And the other half?
The other half were praising it as a defensive masterclass, like the absolute pinnacle of tactical discipline.
It is the eternal football debate.
So, structurally speaking, where does a defensive masterclass end and just sheer luck begin?
It is a phenomenal question. The line between a masterclass and luck usually comes down to whether the defensive team is actively dictating the spaces where the opponent operates.
Okay, so control is the key factor.
Right. If a team is panicking, breaking their shape, and the opponent is missing open goals from 6 yards out, well, that is luck.
Because they should have scored.
Exactly. But that isn't what Arsenal was doing. Arsenal was deliberately conceding the wide areas and intensely protecting the center of the pitch.
Letting them cross it in.
Saliba and Gabriel were managing the space, denying clear passing lanes, and forcing PSG to deliver crosses into areas where Arsenal inherently had a numerical advantage. It was highly structured.
But Enrique's philosophy is designed precisely to break down that kind of structure over time, isn't it?
Precisely. Enrique's explicit instruction to his teams is relentless patience.
Just keep moving the ball.
Yes, he knows that human beings simply cannot maintain perfect concentration and perfect muscle tension for 90 minutes, especially in extreme humidity.
Eventually the wall cracks.
Right. His strategy was to use the ball as a literal tool for physical exhaustion. By making Arsenal chase shadows, moving them side to side, PSG was systematically draining Arsenal's glycogen stores.
They were wearing them down.
Enrique wasn't looking for 10 clear chances. He was just waiting for the inevitable moment when an exhausted defender's brain lagged a fraction of a second behind his legs.
And that biological reality catches up to Arsenal in the 65th minute. This is the absolute turning point of the entire match.
Everything changed here.
Our match feed specifically noted that Kvaratskhelia had been remarkably quiet for the first hour of the game. Like Arsenal had effectively neutralized him.
They kept him totally locked down.
But then minute 65 hits.
And this is the terrifying luxury of having a true world-class attacker on the pitch.
They can just wake up.
They don't need to dominate the entire game. They just need one single momentary lapse in the defensive matrix.
Kvaratskhelia suddenly explodes into life.
Yeah.
He makes a razor-sharp, incredibly clever darting run in behind Christian Mosquera.
The makeshift right back.
Exactly. And remember what we discussed at the top of the show? Mosquera has been defending for his life for an hour. The lactic acid is building.
His legs are heavy.
Kvaratskhelia drops his shoulder, shifts his weight, and Mosquera makes a desperate lunging tackle. He gets it completely wrong.
He was just a fraction late.
He brings the winger down inside the penalty area. The referee points straight to the spot. Penalty.
It was the exact scenario Luis Enrique's entire system was engineered to create.
It finally worked.
It wasn't just a poor tackle, it was the culmination of cumulative fatigue. Mosquera's spatial awareness, dulled by an hour of intense concentration and physical exertion, betrayed him for a microsecond.
His brain just couldn't tell his legs to stop fast enough.
He misjudged the distance, he committed his weight too early, and an elite attacker punished the mistake instantly.
Ousmane Dembélé steps up to take the penalty for PSG. Our statistical reports gave Dembélé a massive 7.47 average rating for this match, effectively making him the player of the game.
He was brilliant all night.
He stares down David Raya, completely ignores the pressure, and coolly slots the ball home. 1-1.
A perfect penalty.
And from the exact moment that ball hit the net, the entire psychological axis of the stadium completely inverted.
The emotional whiplash for Arsenal in that moment would have been absolutely devastating.
I can't even imagine.
When you expend that much energy to protect a 1-0 lead, defending deep in your own half, you are constantly telling yourself that the suffering is worth it because you are winning.
You have a prize at the end of the tunnel.
Exactly. The second that equalizer goes in, the illusion shatters. You suddenly realize you have absolutely nothing to show for an hour of agonizing physical labor.
And PSG is just getting started.
Right. You are staring down a PSG team that is suddenly energized, buoyant, and clearly smelling blood.
It turned into an absolute siege. You could physically see the Arsenal players drooping on the pitch while PSG started turning the screw.
They really piled on the pressure.
In the 77th minute, Kvaratskhelia gets free on the edge of the box and unleashes a curling shot that smashes violently off the post.
So close.
Then, right at the end of normal time, the 89th minute, Vitinha finds a pocket of space and drives a shot agonizingly close to the crossbar. Arsenal are just staggering around the ring, begging for the bell to ring.
And this is where the physical toll transitioned from mere exhaustion into literal injury.
Exactly. We move into extra time, and the touchline reporters are painting a genuinely grim picture. Arsenal's defender Piero Hincapié is visibly struggling.
He was limping heavily.
The reports indicated he was carrying a significant muscular problem that started early in extra time, but he was forced to battle on, essentially playing on one leg, wincing with every single step. Why wasn't he taken off?
Because of the harsh reality of the rulebook.
They were out of subs, right.
Arsenal had already used their 6 allotted substitutions. Mikel Arteta had desperately tried to inject fresh legs into his midfield and forward line as the game wore on, trying to relieve the pressure.
Trying to find an outlet.
But in doing so, he exhausted his options. Hincapié had absolutely no choice but to stay on the pitch.
Just brutal.
This is a critical tactical detail too, because it also meant that Gabriel Jesus, a highly experienced forward who was known for his composure and penalty-taking ability, was left trapped on the bench, completely helpless to influence the climax of the game.
That lack of options, the sheer desperation of the situation, sets the stage for what became the most explosive controversy of the night.
This was a huge talking point.
We are deep into extra time. Minute 102. Arsenal substitute Noni Madueke receives the ball and bursts into the right side of the PSG penalty box.
The rare counterattack.
He cuts inside and he tangles with PSG's Nuno Mendes. Madueke hits the deck hard. The entire Arsenal team, the bench, the fans, they all just erupt. They are screaming for a penalty.
It was a moment of immense kinetic collision.
But the referee, Daniel Siebert, doesn't even hesitate. He violently waves away the protests. Play on.
No penalty.
The reaction from Arsenal is furious. Declan Rice gets right in the referee's face and is immediately shown a yellow card for dissent. Over on the touchline, Mikel Arteta basically loses his mind, screaming at the fourth official, and Siebert marches over and books Arteta as well.
If we contrast the Mascara foul on Kvaratskhelia earlier with his Madueke non-call, we hit upon one of the most frustrating and fascinating elements of football: subjective interpretation.
It's all up to one guy's eyes.
We use massive data-driven systems to analyze these matches, but the most consequential decisions are still made by a human being interpreting high-speed physical contact in real time.
From a specific angle.
Right. Madueke clearly felt he had established body position, while Mendes felt he stood his ground and the attacker initiated the contact.
But regardless of whether the call was technically correct or not, the psychological damage to Arsenal was profound.
Oh, massive.
When you are already completely physically depleted, a perceived injustice like that feels incredibly heavy. It drains whatever tiny, small reserves of emotional energy you have left.
Absolutely. A decision like that can galvanize a team if it happens in the 20th minute. Give them a common enemy.
Sure, rile them up.
But in the 102nd minute, it just breeds a toxic, draining frustration.
Now, before we move to the final climax on the pitch, our sources noted a very powerful, highly visible moment that occurred in the aftermath of the match, which really underscores the intense human emotions surrounding these players.
It was a very striking image.
Following the victory, PSG defender Ilya Zabarny draped himself in a Ukrainian flag. During his post-match interviews, he explicitly dedicated the victory to his home country.
Right.
He spoke about being a proud Ukrainian, describing his people as strong and free, and stated he wanted to send a message to the world about fighting for freedom and never giving up.
It is a stark, poignant reminder.
It really is.
We spend hours analyzing the tactical geometry of a low block or the biomechanics of a winger. But the players executing these actions are individuals. They are carrying the immense weight of real-world events and personal histories onto the pitch with them.
It just grounds the entire spectacle. It reminds you of the humanity underneath all the tactical systems. But returning to the isolated vacuum of the match itself, the referee blows the final whistle on extra time.
The whistle blows.
120 minutes of grueling attritional warfare are finally over. The score is 1-1. All the tactical plans, all the possession stats, all the expected goals metrics, they are all entirely meaningless now.
Throw the spreadsheets out the window.
We enter the ultimate terrifying lottery, the penalty shootout.
The penalty shootout is perhaps the most fascinating psychological experiment in all of sports.
It is pure torture.
You take a highly fluid, chaotic, team-oriented game played over 2 hours, and you abruptly reduce it to a series of isolated, static duels. The physical demands vanish, and the psychological demands skyrocket exponentially.
Let's truly put ourselves in the shoes of these players for a second. You have been running, tackling, and sweating in 80% humidity for 2 hours.
Your body is completely empty.
Your legs feel like lead. Your lungs are burning. The pressure of tens of millions of fans watching around the globe is bearing down on you. And the very first event of the shootout is a simple coin toss.
And that coin toss is remarkably consequential.
PSG's Achraf Hakimi steps up for the toss. He wins it. He makes two critical decisions right there. First, he chooses the end of the stadium where the massive vocal wall of PSG supporters is housed.
A huge advantage.
Second, he chooses to have PSG shoot first.
Why does shooting first matter so much? Is it really that big of an advantage?
Statistically and psychologically, it is a massive advantage.
Really?
Studies on penalty shootouts consistently show a significant win probability for the team that shoots first. The mechanism behind this is scoreboard pressure.
Because they can take the lead immediately.
If PSG shoots first and scores, Arsenal's taker steps up knowing that if he misses, they are immediately trailing. Every Arsenal kick becomes an exercise in survival rather than an opportunity to advance.
That makes total sense. Furthermore, by choosing the PSG end, Hakimi ensured his teammates will be looking at a supportive, encouraging, visual backdrop.
Friendly faces.
While the Arsenal takers had to stare down a hostile, jeering, moving wall of noise, specifically designed to distract them. Hakimi essentially won a major psychological victory before a single ball was placed on the spot.
So the table is set. The drama unfolds, kick by agonizing kick. Gonzalo Ramos is up first for PSG, but there is a massive delay.
A terrible delay.
The referee, Daniel Siebert, stops everything to go talk to both goalkeepers, emphatically explaining the rules about keeping one foot on the line. Ramos is forced to just stand there on the edge of the box. 30 seconds. 45 seconds.
Just waiting.
Just waiting, overthinking.
That delay is a taker's absolute worst nightmare.
You just want to get it over with.
Your routine is completely disrupted, the adrenaline spikes, and then immediately begins to crash. You have way too much time to visualize failure.
But Ramos finally gets the whistle, steps up, and completely ignores the delay, smashing the ball high to the right. A brilliant, emphatic finish. 1-0 PSG.
Great penalty.
Victor Gyökeres steps up for Arsenal. He is cold as ice. Low to the right, keeper goes the wrong way. 1-1. Désiré Doué is next for PSG. Same exact result. Low to the right, wrong footing Raya. 2-1 PSG.
The quality was so high early on.
And then we get to Heartbreak Eze for Arsenal. And this is where the mechanics of the shootout really come into play.
What's fascinating here is Eze's penalty is a case study in high-risk biomechanics.
Eze decides to use a very deliberate, exaggerated stutter step approach. He runs up, dramatically slows down right before striking the ball, and waits for the PSG goalkeeper, Matvei Safonov, to make a move.
He's playing chicken with the keeper.
He wants the keeper to dive early so he can just roll it the other way. But Safonov does something incredibly difficult. He turns into a statue, he doesn't bite, he holds his ground.
Unbelievable discipline.
Eze, seeing the keeper hasn't moved, completely misreads the situation, gets his footing slightly tangled, and clips the ball past the left-hand post. He misses entirely. Walk me through the exact physical breakdown of what happens when a stutter step fails like that.
To understand the failure, you really have to look at the kinetic chain of a football shot.
Okay, the kinetic chain.
Power and accuracy are generated by the smooth transfer of momentum from your run-up, through your planting foot, into your hips, and finally through the striking leg.
It's a fluid motion.
The entire premise of the stutter step is deception. You intentionally break your own kinetic chain to trick the goalkeeper into committing early. It's a huge gamble.
Because if the keeper dives...
If the keeper dives, you don't need momentum. You just tap the ball into the empty space. But if the goalkeeper, like Safonov did here, exhibits supreme discipline and refuses to shift his center of gravity, the trap snaps back on the shooter.
Because now Eze is standing completely still over the ball.
Exactly. Eze lost all his forward momentum. He's essentially trying to strike the ball perfectly from a standing start.
Which is incredibly hard to do accurately.
Because he has no kinetic energy moving forward, he has to try and generate all the power and placement purely from his quadricep and hip flexor at the very last microsecond.
Oh, wow.
He tries to overcompensate. He tries to be too precise. His planting foot lands perhaps a single centimeter out of alignment, and he pulls the shot wide. It is a technique that demands absolute perfection, and when the deception fails, the biomechanical disadvantage is almost impossible to overcome.
It felt like an absolute gut punch to the Arsenal fans in the stadium, but the drama was far from over. Because up next for PSG is their left back, Nuno Mendes.
A chance to take a huge lead.
Mendes strikes it decently, but Arsenal's goalkeeper, David Raya, produces an absolutely spectacular, sprawling, explosive dive to his left. He extends fully and parries the ball away. He denies Mendes and keeps Arsenal's pulse beating.
It was an astonishing save from Raya.
Huge moment.
Raya read the visual cues, the angle of Mendez's hips, the placement of his non-kicking foot perfectly, and generated immense explosive power off his line.
The tension in the stadium is now completely suffocating. Declan Rice steps up. He knows the weight of the moment. He scores for Arsenal. We are tied at 2-2.
Ice in his veins.
Achraf Hakimi answers for PSG. 3-2. Gabriel Martinelli steps up, feeling the immense pressure, and slams one incredibly high and perfectly placed to his left. 3-3.
You couldn't write a tighter script.
Lucas Beraldo, a young defender, shows incredible composure and answers for PSG. 4-3. We have reached sudden death territory. PSG leads 4-3 in the shootout. Arsenal must score this next penalty to stay alive. If they miss, Paris Saint-Germain are the champions of Europe.
The ultimate defining pressure point of the entire season.
And the man stepping up to take this decisive kick is Gabriel Magalhães, the center back. Think about this narrative for a second.
It is almost too cruel to watch.
This is the absolute rock of Arsenal's defense. This is the man who spent 120 minutes throwing his body in front of shots, winning headers, violently clearing crosses, and fighting off sheer exhaustion to get his team to this exact moment.
He was a warrior all night.
He places the ball on the spot. He takes a long, deep breath. He runs up, and he skies it wildly over the crossbar. The ball sails deep into the stands. The referee blows the final whistle. It is over.
Devastating.
Paris Saint-Germain has won the Champions League. Gabriel collapses onto the turf, just burying his face in his hands.
It is the cruelest, most brutal paradox in elite football.
To me, it feels less like a sporting event and more like a Greek tragedy. It is as if you are watching a tragic play where the mighty hulking warrior, the hero whose massive shield has protected the city gates from an invading army all night long, is suddenly asked to perform an incredibly delicate task to save the day, and he just fails.
That is a great way to describe it.
It is like taking a massive, heavy-duty bulldozer built entirely for demolition and rugged endurance, and suddenly asking it to perform microscopic, delicate laser surgery. The muscle memory, the training, the physiological state of the machine, it is all entirely wrong for the task. You couldn't script a more heart-wrenching finale.
That analogy perfectly captures why the penalty shootout remains so deeply controversial among football purists.
Right, because it doesn't reflect the actual game.
We spend entire seasons evaluating teams on their collective cohesion, their tactical intelligence, their ability to press as a unit and defend as an organism.
All that team stuff.
And yet, the ultimate prize is decided by asking central defenders men, whose entire professional existence is dedicated to destroying attacks and aggressively clearing danger, to suddenly execute a highly refined, delicate technical action while under the most intense psychological duress a human being can experience.
Which brings us to the raw, immediate aftermath of this monumental match, and the reactions from the managers really underscore the contrasting realities they were living in.
The post-match press conferences were fascinating.
Luis Enrique arrived at his post-match press conference, exuding the calm of a seasoned serial winner. He didn't gloat, but he was highly analytical.
Very composed.
He openly acknowledged that once a game goes to a penalty shootout, you are relying heavily on luck and the randomness of the moment. However, he firmly asserted that if you analyze the totality of the 120 minutes, the suffocating possession, the territory, the sheer volume of attacks PSG were the deserved winners.
Enrique is looking at the macro picture there.
The law of averages.
He understands perfectly that the shootout is a coin flip, but his system, the 75% possession, the 887 passes, the 43 touches in the box, was designed to ensure his team was dominating the variables they could control.
Stacking the deck in your favor.
He tired Arsenal out, forced them into mistakes, and banked on the law of averages eventually paying out.
On the other side of the stadium corridors, Mikel Arteta painted a picture of absolute devastation. He was visibly hurting, and he didn't hide the deep, profound pain of the defeat.
You could see it on his face.
But he also refused to let the narrative solely be about a missed penalty. He pointed directly to the refereeing decisions. I'm looking at the reports here, and Arteta explicitly stated, "Those margins didn't go for us tonight."
Referring to the penalty shouts.
Yeah, he drew a direct, bitter comparison between the penalty awarded for Mosquera's clumsy tackle and the penalty denied to Medwick in extra time. Yet, even through that immense frustration, he pivoted to express incredible pride in his squad.
Which is so important for a manager to do.
He reminded everyone that Arsenal had just navigated a grueling 63-game season, winning the Premier League and dragging a Parisian juggernaut to the absolute precipice.
Arteta was performing a very necessary piece of psychological management there.
Protecting his players.
As a leader, he has to absorb the anger and frustration of his players by highlighting the external factors, the fine margins, the subjective refereeing that caused them.
Giving them an out.
But he also has to fiercely defend their monumental achievements over the 10-month season to ensure this devastating final loss doesn't create a psychological hangover that infects their next campaign.
And the players immediately rallied around that exact message. Declan Rice and the club captain, Martin Odegaard, stepped up to the microphones while the pain was still fresh.
True leadership from those two.
They didn't offer excuses, but they fiercely defended Gabriel and Eze. They made a completely valid, unassailable point. Without the defensive heroics of Gabriel all season long, and without the creative spark of Eze, Arsenal wouldn't have even been in a position to win the Premier League, let alone contest a Champions League final.
It was a vital show of internal unity.
And while we are talking about unity and the human element, it is absolutely impossible to ignore the actions of the opposition after the final whistle.
One of the most memorable images of the night.
Absolutely. Amidst the chaotic, wild celebrations of the Parisian players, with confetti raining down and the trophy being prepared, PSG's veteran captain, Marquinhos, physically separated himself from his celebrating teammates.
He sought Gabriel out.
He went completely out of his way to walk across the pitch, find a totally devastated company. Gabriel still slumped on the turf, pull him up, and physically console him.
That moment transcends the tactical analysis and the tribalism of club football.
It's just pure empathy.
Marquinhos is a veteran who has experienced the absolute highest of highs, but he's also been on the losing end of massive, heartbreaking games. He understood the unique, isolating, suffocating agony that Gabriel was experiencing in that exact microsecond.
He knew how heavy that felt.
It was a profound recognition of shared suffering among elite athletes who know exactly what it costs to compete at this level.
It was a beautiful, deeply human moment to cap off a brutal night. But as we zoom out and look at the legacy of this entire epic saga, the overriding theme that echoes through all our sources, from the live commentary to the granular data, is exactly what Mikel Arteta highlighted in his press conference: fine margins.
It always comes down to that.
I really want to hammer this point home because when you truly think about the scale of modern football, the contrast is absolutely staggering.
It is the defining paradox of the elite modern game.
Break the reality of that paradox down for us, because we are analyzing a sport that operates on a multi-billion-dollar scale.
Massive, massive resources.
These clubs employ armies of data scientists running predictive algorithms. They use advanced cryotherapy chambers for recovery, microscopic dietary management tailored to individual players' DNA, and the most complex, intricately designed tactical systems ever devised by the human mind.
They try to control every single variable.
And yet, after all of that investment, all of that science, all of that preparation, what does the ultimate outcome actually hinge upon?
It hinges on microscopic, almost absurdly fragile variables. When two elite, hyper-prepared teams collide, their systems essentially cancel each other out.
The tactics neutralize the tactics.
The billions of dollars and the tactical genius neutralize one another. What separates victory from defeat at the absolute summit of the sport are the things you simply cannot systematize.
Exactly. The entire trajectory of a season, the legacy of a dynasty, was dictated by the literal flip of a coin that allowed Achraf Hakimi to decide the psychological environment of a penalty shootout.
A coin toss.
A coin toss.
A referee's subjective viewing angle shifted by perhaps 2 degrees, determining whether Noni Madueke was fouled or whether Nuno Mendes stood his ground.
Or a teenager's brain lagging.
The cognitive lag of a 19-year-old midfielder reacting a fraction of a second too late. Or the exact millimeter-precise placement of a planting foot by Ebreki Eze on a stutter step penalty.
Just 1 centimeter off.
If Eze's foot lands exactly 1 centimeter to the left, his weight transfers optimally, his kinetic chain remains intact, the ball strikes the inside of the post instead of the outside, and the entire narrative of this final, the headlines, the legacy, the history books, is completely rewritten.
It is terrifying when you put it like that, the sheer fragility of success. You can systematize the performance, you can optimize the nutrition, but you can never, ever fully tame the chaotic, random nature of the game itself.
Fine margins decided the outcome. They always do.
And so, the legacy of that hot, humid night in Budapest is set in stone. Paris Saint-Germain cements a true modern dynasty.
Back-to-back titles is incredible.
Winning back-to-back Champions League titles is an incredibly rare feat, and it elevates Luis Enrique into an exclusive elite tier of managers with 3 European crowns to his name. They prove that their relentless, suffocating, possession-based philosophy can withstand the ultimate pressure and grind a world-class opponent down to dust.
And for Arsenal, while the heartbreak of losing in that manner will sting for a very long time, the undeniable legacy of this match is that they have proven they belong at the absolute summit of European football.
They showed they can hang with the best.
To absorb 887 passes, to survive 43 touches in their own box, and to push this PSG juggernaut to sudden death penalties, all while dealing with a makeshift defense, shows that Arteta's project has reached total maturity. They are no longer plucky challengers. They are heavyweight contenders.
Heavyweights who will undoubtedly be back on this stage soon. But as we close the book on this deep dive, that paradox of the fine margins leaves us with a lingering, provocative thought to chew on.
I love a good hypothetical.
We talked extensively about the sheer, almost illogical cruelty of asking exhausted center backs men who have spent 2 hours destroying attacks to suddenly execute delicate laser surgery from the penalty spot to decide a championship.
It feels wrong on some level.
Considering how much of modern football is defined by tactical cohesion, synchronized team shapes, and collective physical effort, is it time for the sport to invent a different tiebreaker for these massive finals?
Something that reflects the actual 90 minutes.
Right. Should we develop a system that relies on team player and collective strategy rather than isolating individuals in a static psychological torture chamber? Or, despite the cruelty, despite the agonizing fragility of it all, is the gladiatorial drama of the penalty shootout exactly what makes this sport so immortal?
It is a question worth asking.
The 61,035 fans sweating in the heavy air of the Puskás Arena will likely never forget the tension they felt that night, and neither will the players who lived it. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the margins of greatness. Keep questioning those fine details, and we'll catch you next time.